some great football on Friday Night Lights, all that sorts of stuff, you know?
I do. As we'll go ahead and dive into the pregame show a little bit deeper here, as we'll look at Labette County's history with Coffeyville just a little bit, and it, as poor as the last 2 years have gone for Labette against Coffeyville in particular, Labette's won 6 out of the last 8 matchups, as they had won 6 straight, but the last 2 years, as I had mentioned, they have failed to knock off the Field Kinley Golden Tornado. Back last year in Altamont at Lucas Field and lost 32-14. John, Coffeyville last season, we'll get into it later, but they were top 10 in 4A in the state of Kansas in run volume per game. They just run the ball over and over again. They had 6 different runners against Labette County last season that combined for nearly 300 yards on the ground. What's new, John, but Labette County is going up against a team this week, tonight, that loves to run the football.
Oh, and they run the ball so much different than our other opponents. We've seen a lot of the wing tee, wishbone sets. This team, they run more of a pro style, so kind of similar to Wellington in that sense, but also different. They run a lot of counter and a lot of power. They pull a lot of the guards, like the Canaan Whites, the Keaton Jones, those big boys. They pull those guys, and they just let Amani Lutton run, or not Luton, I should say, my fault. Aaron Turnstall run right behind him as they create some pretty big gaps for the NATO rushing attack.
Yeah, absolutely, as it is different. We've been so used to that misdirection, a lot of pre-snap movement and motion from the quarterback, but it might not be that case tonight. But one thing certainly will be, John, we've kind of picked a little bit at this Grizzly defense from a standpoint that they kind of struggle to get to those edges a little bit and cut off that sideline. Up the middle, they've been fantastic, especially in certain sequences, but they've been gashed on those outside hashes a little bit, and Coffeyville is fast. I don't think I've ever said Coffeyville is slow in my life. They always just continue to produce those highly electric backs, receivers, even quarterbacks. So how important is it for Labette County this evening, John, on the defensive side to limit those explosive plays?
I mean, it's everything, Jack. I don't think we'll have as much of an issue at the outside edge because we're not facing that triple option where that defensive end, the guy who's supposed to hold the outside, have outside responsibility, he's not going to be crashing in on the dive or anything.
Right.
So that's going to allow him to stay home and, keep the edges contained. So I think everything's going to have to be stopped up the middle. It's going to have to, and that's going to allow some explosive plays down the field later on if they get the inside running game, inside zone game going for them.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, as it is going to be a lot of that attention to detail on the run game because Coffeyville, kind of like a few of our other opponents in the last month, they don't throw the ball a lot, John. Last year, Ernie, their quarterback, only threw the ball 8 times, Axel Ernie. They don't throw a lot. Out of those 8 passes, 1 was an interception. So certainly a lot of focus is going to have to be on that ground game. As we flip over to Labette County's side of things just a little bit here, Jamal Jackson against Coffeyville last season only carried the ball 4 times. John, this is a player this year who has been terrific with a capital T. Sophomore breakout season without question, but only 4 carries for 20 yards against Coffeyville last season. So I'm sure they've done their homework with Coach Wade, fantastic head coach at the helm for Coffeyville. But this will be their first night playing Jamal Jackson on the AstroTurf.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll be expecting a lot of the inside run or anything, but who knows? We may surprise them because I'm sure that's what they're thinking. We're not going to run the ball at Canaan White or Keaton Jones right there up in the middle, as those two are some monstrous defensive tackles for that NATO front. So it's going to be interesting. I think that's a lot of the reason Jamal only had 4 carries last year is just because of the size we're going up against on the line.
As at this juncture in the Tent Connection pregame show for our radio crew, we're going to send it back to Amanda at the station and let you listen in to the director of sports in Kansas, Chet Coupland, as he interviewed the head coach of the Grizzlies, Sean Price. and kind of in a negative way. Sometimes you make those youthful mistakes is more so what he was referring to, but we saw those a little bit, especially the lack of tackling, he also said, against Fort Scott last week, and that's where we're going to look at a little bit deeper here. Labette County fell 49-20 last week at home on homecoming to Fort Scott, a game in which Labette County just struggled. Kendall Holtzman went 11 for 24, 109 yards, and no touchdowns. What broke down particularly in that second half for Labette County last week, John?
I mean, everything just kind of, just didn't go well. I mean, we had a couple drives where we were moving the ball very well, but then we just couldn't do anything after. It just stalled out. The offense just kept stalling out, and the protection wasn't quite there where it should be for Kendall.
Right.
He hasn't done a great job either these past couple weeks, with the ball placement and the accuracy. But the offensive line hasn't helped him out either. So it's kind of a back and forth, One game the offensive line plays good, Kendall's just off a hair. The other game, Kendall's playing great, offensive line just isn't holding up. So they got to get on the same page up front and in the backfield.
You're listening to the Tank Connection pregame show of Labette County Grizzly football as we're a little over 17 minutes away before Labette County kicks it off on homecoming here at Field Kinley, taking on the Golden Tornado this evening. As Jamal Jackson, terrific again last week. 20 attempts, 126 rushing yards, found the end zone 3 different times last week. That's a pretty good stat line there for a sophomore who's had more than a pretty good season.
Yeah, I think he's the best running back we've seen so far this year. I mean, he truly is. You could sit here and say these other backs are putting up great numbers, but they have great O-lines. I'm not saying our O-line's bad or anything, but we don't have those 6'5", 300-pound behemoths up front. And what Jamal's doing with the space he has is amazing. It truly is a wonder to watch him out there when he goes to work and he makes that cut, and he makes a couple guys miss. Then he goes 40, 50 yards to the end zone, It's special to see week in and week out, Jack. And I know we weren't really thinking we're going to see this kind of stuff from him heading into the year, but as the weeks gone on, we just see our jaws just drop lower and lower to the floor. So we watch him run the ball so well for this Grizzly unit.
Yeah, he really stands tall, is patient, hits those holes so well. That was very well said there, John. He's been so fun to watch throughout this season. And another sophomore who has kind of had his breakout. It began at Wellington 2 weeks ago, and you could argue it continued last week with the impressive grabs that they were, not the amount, but the impressiveness of them. Sophomore receiver Barrett Heston only had 2 catches for a little over 40 yards last week, but at Wellington, 2 touchdown catches for plenty more yards than that. Barrett Heston has been really snagging some balls over some corners' heads the last 2 weeks. Barrett has become a target that Kendall enjoys throwing the ball to, as well as Lawrence Holt in that deep threat. But talk a little bit about Barrett Heston this season, right there with Jamal on his breakout campaign.
Yeah, he's done a great job. He's a physical receiver, Jack. And when I say this, I know a lot of folks around the area, they know Nathan Smith was a great receiver for us. When I see Barrett, I see a lot of Nathan. And the fact that they attack the ball so well when it's up in the air. They high point the ball exceptionally well for, I mean, Barrett's not a small person, but he's also not a 6'5" receiver like Xavier Phillips or someone. But he does so well in positioning himself, and he's just so physical, the point of contact. It's hard to, play defense on that. And, I hope we get to see him play some more snaps on the outside, but it's kind of hard to do if you don't want your guys playing both ways and getting burnt out. So I think the Grizzly coaching staff has done a nice job of kind of putting him on a pitch count offensively.
As that kind of leads me into our last point here as we look back at the Fort Scott game. I remember in our Eye Care Associates halftime show last week, we talked about how similar it felt there in the press box at the end of the second quarter to the game at Wellington. It felt like a game where Labette County did a really good job to be in it at halftime, as at Wellington it very well could have been a blowout at half, but Labette was only down 2 scores. Same thing last week at home against Fort Scott. Then you kind of talk yourself into a Grizzly comeback, and while it can happen, and they've shown their ceiling, or perhaps how they can push that ceiling in their first game against Circle, it's just broken down. And then the other teams doubled up on us, as did Wellington and the Tigers last week. Defense seems to get tired, John. midway through that third quarter, they get pretty gassed. They're on the field quite a bit. In the past 3 weeks, they've given up 49, 46, and 45 points. You never want to start pointing fingers, but they are on the field a lot. And sometimes those drives are quick. Labette County's been prone to giving up big, explosive plays, and then bam, the defense is off the field. Then the offense goes 3 and out. Defense is back on the field. It's this lethal cycle where no one can really get in a rhythm, and the momentum is just kind of stagnant.
Yeah, and that cannot happen, coming out the gate tonight. You can't come out with 3 straight 3 and outs and 3 straight touchdowns for the natives. You can't get down in that big of a hole to try to dig yourself out of in that second half. It just cannot happen tonight if you want a chance to win. And this is a must-win game for the SUK title, Jack. It is. If we don't win tonight, it's not looking very good. Chanute's a dominant team. They're probably not going to lose to anyone, if we're being completely honest. So it's a must-win tonight. You have to come out with the right attitude and execute. That's the key word tonight, Jack, execute. Are the Grizzlies going to come out and execute the game plan to perfection and come out of here tonight with a win? Because that's what it's going to take.
It absolutely is, and a player that is very good at executing. In fact, leads the defense in tackles this season. Roper Whitley is the player in which I sat down with this week as we welcome you now into our player interview segment of tonight's Tank Connection pregame show for both our radio audience as well as our YouTube audience. We welcome you into tonight's player interview as part of the Tank Connection pregame show ahead of Labette County's SEK road matchup, first league game on the road at Coffeyville. As for the first time in our player interview segment, we are joined by someone on the defensive side of the ball, junior linebacker Roper Whitley. Roper, thanks for sitting down with me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Roper, you're the team's leading tackler at 8.5 nearly tackles a game. You have the lone interception that the Grizzly defense has snagged this year against Pittsburgh. Roper, what has allowed you to take such a leap, as you were top 3 or 5 in tackles last year too, but what has allowed you to surge and be the leader of this defense?
Something that's really helped me allow me to do that is our defensive line. They're fantastic. They get a good push for us, and you got guys that if you miss the tackle, they're going to come hit them. Taden Claiborne, he's probably one of the best downhill football players we've got on our team, and that's really important as a linebacker.
We talk about you being the leader on paper, but I know you personally, and there's a lot of guys, whether you really realize it or not, both on the football team and some just part of the student body, that look up to you. And so how have you taken on that responsibility? I know you're a fairly quiet fella, but on the field I'm in the press box and can't always hear. So do you bring that responsibility and return it to them from a vocal standpoint or just in your play and body language?
I'm more of a silent leader, you would say. I just by body language and like, hey, keep your head up, you're doing fine.
That definitely has a ripple effect. And while it might not, be, the defense is just coming off the field because the other team scored and somebody might just shrug off your positivity, that certainly has an impact. So we definitely appreciate that you do that on the defensive side of the ball for your teammates. And I want to ask, Coach Hayward is your linebacking coach, so you probably have spent a lot of time with him since the month of May or June, whenever that began. Talk about your relationship with him and the linebacking unit in return to Coach Hayward.
Mikey started being the linebacker coach in my 7th grade year, so I've been around Mikey a lot.
Wow.
And he definitely brings energy. He tries to get it going on Friday nights, and he really gets to you at times. If you're not doing what you need to be doing, he's going to tell you what you need to be doing. And that's what we need as a good coach there.
Is there anybody at the higher up level, a college athlete or a professional athlete, that you look up to and try to model your game after?
I really liked watching Ray Lewis or some of the highlights I've seen of him.
Yeah, Ray. What is it about Ray Lewis? Because he had a pretty bold personality. Boy, was he a good player. But he had a big personality. Is that something that drew you into him a little bit?
Yeah, and just his playing style. He's a typical linebacker. He's mean. He wants to come hit you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see that in you too, because you'll be lined up, in your position sometimes a few yards behind, depending on what the set is for you guys, behind the defensive line, and the ball's handed off to the halfback, and there's Roper Whitley. Talk about how, especially in the last couple weeks where we've played offenses that are misdirectional. So How have you found your football IQ develop over the last year so you can stay home, let your teammates do their job, and you go get it done?
Just something really helped me is trusting them. You got to trust them to do their job so you can do your job.
That's so important. And was that challenging for you at a younger age, and this year you feel like you've taken that step maybe?
Yes, last year it was hard for me to stay home because I just wanted to go get the ball, get the tackle, but that's not my job.
For sure, and a good leader and a good defensive player definitely trust their teammates, and in return can benefit a little bit as you have this season. Roper, obviously not the start to league play that you want, especially at home on homecoming, but this team's so good at putting losses behind them, I feel like, and guys like yourself help out with that a lot. You go to Coffeyville this Friday night, presumably an underdog, but maybe not in your guys' mind in that locker room. Talk about the mental toughness of this team and how big of a win it would be at Coffeyville.
It'd be a huge win, and our mental toughness is probably, we get referred to as Labette County for being mentally tough, and we're going to battle through anything you throw at us.
Roper, thanks again for having a seat with me and adding on to our Tank Connection pregame show. I know that Grizzly Nation sure loves hearing from players. As you know, John and I up in the booth can chat all we want, but you guys are down there getting your fingernails dirty, so we appreciate you guys taking the time to sit down with us. Is there any message that you'd like to send to Grizzly Nation ahead of the game at Coffeyville?
Show up, be loud, and support us like you guys always do. Love you guys.
Thank you, Roper. Couldn't have said it better myself. This has been our player interview of tonight's Tank Connection pregame show, and after this break, we'll have more coming up. The atmosphere is heating up here at Veteran Memorial Stadium ahead of the homecoming host of the Coffeyville Golden Tornado as they get set to run through a tunnel of cheerleaders, dancers, and the pep band onto the turf here at the Red Raven Community College's football facility. A few, it's not really red and gold fans over there on the visiting bleachers. It's more so blankets and hoodies more, John, over there. It is a cooler night with a bit of a north breeze. 5.5 minutes until kick from Coffeyville. Jack Leake, John Kohler with you. We'll go ahead and look at the opponent preview portion of the Tank Connection pregame show. Coffeyville comes into tonight's contest at a 3-2 record, as Coffeyville is one of those teams that has taken a couple on the chin outside of some SEK games, that is, as Coffeyville on their first game of the year, bit of an upset in some people's eyes, lost at Mulvane 28-25, and then their second loss came last week here on this field to Wamego 49-14. So Coffeyville may be providing Labette County a bit of film to watch if they want to give themselves a little bit of momentum in terms of your mental state if you're the Grizzlies heading into tonight's contest. But those 3 wins came sandwiched in between those 2 losses. They beat Winfield 14-0. They went to Columbus and beat the Titans, who lost a lot of seniors, 42-12, and shut out Independence on the road 35-0. John, this is a veteran-laden team, big up front on both sides. They bring back a lot of their explosiveness, but up front in particular, Kanan White, 6'1", 270, Keaton Jones, 6'5", 300. They're going to make their plays, but how do you limit them to the point where you can stay in the game?
I think it's a lot like how teams scheme against Aaron Donald, in the NFL. You can't run the ball at him. You just got to keep him out of the game. That's what I'm saying. Is like you don't run the ball at him. You don't let him gain any momentum by him making play because he's going to make plays. But it's, you gotta run the offense away from Canaan White. You can't run it to him. He's an all-state defensive lineman. He's probably the best defensive lineman in this area. So it's just don't even look his way. Wherever he lines up, you're going to play the opposite way. That's how it has to be tonight. And if you do have to run the ball at him, you have to do a draw or something. That way you get him upfield and you get enough of a crease up front that Jamal can get through. You can't run a straight dive or a power or something at him.
Canaan White won the silver medal at the Class 4A wrestling state tournament in Salina back in February. So he certainly uses that big body on the wrestling mat as well as on the turf. As Coffeyville makes their way onto the field, bit of an eruption from way down below us from their fans as we are 5 stories above all the action here at the college facilities. But, John, they also bring back a lot of skill position players. Alex Ernie, always nice when you return your quarterback no matter how good they are. Not saying that about Ernie, great quarterback, but it's always nice to return your starting quarterback. Aaron Tunstall, running back. He was out last year in the game at Altamont, but last year, John, Colbert was their running back. 1,000-yard rusher, Jeremy Colbert Jr. is his name. A 1,000-yard rusher last season. Something was going on in the preseason high school football magazine I read where he might be out or limited for his senior year. Not sure at all on that situation. That's just what I read. But he only has a handful of attempts this year. He does have a touchdown, so I am unsure if he will be suiting up or not. But it is a different runner than last year. Aaron Tunstall, a handful for sure. Amani and Amir Luton, tight end is Amani. Amir is the wide receiver. Explosive, physical, fast, good hands. All of the boxes are checked with the Luton brothers. Kashawn Hayes, wide receiver, and then Braden Voss and Joseph Neuenswander on the lines as well. So talk about how important it is, John, to return skill position guys.
It's definitely a huge part of the game, having those skill guys out there, even if you do run the ball a lot. Having experience out there blocking and setting the edge for your runners is exceptional to have, but it's more important on the defensive side of the ball, having that secondary, which they're going to be good. They're going to be good out there in the secondary tonight, so it's important to return experience. And Ernie, even though he doesn't throw the ball a lot, he's very good. He trains with the same quarterback guy that Kendall did in the offseason. Yeah. So he's coached well, and he's going to play a good football when he has a chance to throw the ball.
Ernie's only thrown 50 passes this year through 5 games. Only 5 touchdowns, so they don't throw the ball a lot. But Aaron Tunstall, the junior running back, has 660 yards on just 54 carries and 8 touchdowns. Captains are making their way to midfield, way down below us. All 10 captains, arms interlocked, meet the official at midfield for the coin toss. We're going to step aside for 30 seconds and come back with the captains, the weather preview, and kickoff.
Everybody is different. Some get injured, while others simply wear down. Whether it's on the court, on the field, or at the gym, Labette Health's orthopedic and sports medicine team has the training and skill to repair, restore, and renew. We share the same goal, and together we'll write your comeback story. For more information about Southeast Kansas' leading orthopedic and sports medicine team, go to labettehealth.com.
As we welcome you back, Grizzly fans, to the closing seconds of the Tank Connection pregame show of tonight's contest. As Coffeyville won the toss, and it appears as if they deferred, so I would assume Labette County will receive here to open the game, but I'm going to turn it over to color commentator John Kohler for tonight's captains and the weather.
Yeah, tonight for the home team, the Coffeyville Golden Tornadoes, their captains are number 5, Amani Luton, number 8, Aaron Tunstall, number 18, Axel Ernie, number 40, Joseph Neuenschwander, and number 65, Canaan White. For your Grizzlies tonight, the captains are number 4, Kagan Bates, number 12, Kendall Holtzman, number 75, Lane Simmons, and number 76, Big Chris Stevens. Weather tonight at kickoff. We've got a cool and breezy 57-degree temperature tonight, so a little bit drop off from last week. Probably early onset of winter coming, so some adversity there a little bit. 11-mile-an-hour southerly wind, so not too bad. 45% humidity, so it's not too stuffy either. So overall, let's say it's okay weather tonight for football. Nothing too bad, nothing too great.
Yeah, it's definitely much more noticeably cooler here this evening, as I'm not sure if it's as cold as it is. It's just been warm, and it's finally not hot anymore. So we'll see how the players fare down there. I know they always refer to cooler weather as good hitting weather. Never understood that. Maybe you do. I don't know.
Sucks.
John says it stinks, but we're set to kick off here in Coffeyville at Veteran Memorial Stadium on homecoming. Labette County looking to make Coffeyville go 500 on the year, and they're trying to get themselves to 2-4. Right foot is placed on the pigskin, and we are underway. Labette to receive. Back deep at the 5 is Lawrence Holt. Crosses the 15, now the 20, and is chopped down to the ground at the 22.
That was quite a boot there from number 13 of the Tornadoes, Zach Becker, the 6'2", 180-pound senior kicker for them. So, bit of a lug there, a bit of a difference from the last couple weeks. Overall, not too shabby of a return, which special teams has been a bright spot for this Grizzle unit so far. Even last year too. I mean, we've got some athletes back there that can do some damage with the ball when they get it.
Kendall Holtzman looking to get a little bit of positive air back in his lungs, as well as underneath that football as he flings it through the air. As that game against Circle at home had like 5 or 6 total touchdowns. I know at least 5, so looking to get a taste of that here again in week 6. Jackson right behind him. A little bit of an early movement. Might be a trick play that's blown up as it was flipped out to the right side to Barrett Heston, and nobody was open, or pardon me, that's Nolan Nash. Nobody was open down the field. John, was that a trick play?
It was, right? He had Nolan out there, which he can throw the ball. I've been noticing it, when he was hurt, he was playing catch stuff. He has an arm on him, so right there, in motion. He ran a circle around Kendall, came out to the flat. They threw it out there. The blocks weren't there on the edge from the other receivers. I couldn't get names or numbers, but Lawrence Holt was free down the field, and if no one had time to look up the field, it would have been a big hitter. Similar to what we've ran in years past with that bubble to Griffin Eaton, and he throws it down the field to Matthew Boyle or someone.
2nd and 14 for the Grizzlies, moving left to right on the opening drive of the game. Quarterback draw for Holtzman, met at the line, maybe got half a yard, not quite, as he's met inside by that big Coffeyville defensive line.
Yeah, some new wrinkles in the running game right there with Kendall. Motion the flanker or the wing and Jarman into the inside to try to pick up a block, just didn't work well there.
Already 3rd and 14 off the rip for Labette County's offense. Ball is on their own 18. 2 receivers right, 2 left. Ball on the right hash. 4-3 front for Coffeyville. Now the slot receiver, Nash, is defended by the slot corner. Holtzman claps once, takes the snap with his right hand. Pressured from the front, flings it across the middle, tipped, and nearly caught as it tumbled to the ground. Near midfield would have been good enough for a first down. Barrett Heston, the intended target. It was tipped, though, by Coffeyville. The defender looks to be Keyshawn Hayes.
Yep, lockdown secondary. He had a shot at Nolan Nash there. Just great coverage there by Hayes, I believe, is what he said. So great defense, just unfortunate there. So now we get a chance to see how this Grizzly defense is going to respond after the thumpings that have been put on them these past couple weeks.
2 receivers back deep for the punt from Barrett Heston for Coffeyville. Goes off his foot. Nice kick, one of his better ones. It's caught at the 45. Shifty return man across the 40, tries to get the edge across the 35, and is chopped down by Roper Whitley, of all people. Heard from him in our interview segment at the 30-yard line. So Coffeyville with picture-perfect field position here on their home field.
Yeah, I don't want to say that was Jeremy Colbert. It was number 40-something for the Golden Tornadoes, but he threw a couple of mean stiff arms out there and was running through some tackles. I know Coach Price said in the pregame interview they've worked on tackling and stuff. They've something struggled with recently, so let's hope that's not a sign of things to come as this game progresses, Jack.
Ernie has Josh Shobe and Aaron Tunstall to his left and right. Here's the snap. It's given up the left side to Shobe into the secondary, and enough for a Coffeyville first down, gain of 12. Inside the red zone goes Coffeyville on attempt number 1. As John, I'll cover for you, as I'm going to struggle too. We are so far away, and it's hard to see who the Coffeyville personnel is as they're wearing their home blacks with kind of yellow outlined numbers. Here's a little counter play around the right edge, and walking it in with ease is Aaron Tunstall for touchdown number 1 of tonight's contest, going to Coffeyville, 6-0 Golden Tornado with 9:49 to go in the first quarter.
Yeah, the Grizzlies came out in a cover 0 look those first 2 plays of the ball game, and they're just getting beat up front and got beat on the edge there, which I thought was something that is not really going to happen as we aren't facing a triple option team, but they're running that lead blocker out there, and it's creating some havoc out there. And the tackling's not there. We're arm tackling, and they got a mean stiff arm, and I think that's something they may work on in practice. As we've struggled with, they're just bouncing off of us. We're not getting in there and wrapping up like they should be. And that coach staff's going to be talking with them right now about that.
The kick is good for Coffeyville, 7-0 home team, 9:50 to go in the first quarter. As I did just get word from our live stream producer, if you will, that we do have a new live stream set up. So if you are watching on YouTube, it will be cut off and then restarted here in just about a minute. So please be patient with us there on the YouTube fronts. But for now, we'll take just a 30-second